Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. Starting with Monday, the 26th of August, and again, the times I give, please keep in mind, are for Eastern time. So if you don't live in that time zone, which basically is the eastern coast of the United States, you're going to have to just adjust. So on the 26th of August, we have the moon in the sign of Gemini. We're in the waning moon cycle. And the thing to notice on this particular day is that there's a lot of verbal activity, a lot of buzz, a lot of news, a lot of information that's coming through. Now, the interesting thing about information, I remember reading years ago as there was an emphasis of the New York Times about the information age and how much data and stuff was out there. And yet, insofar as innovation, there was not the kind of movements that had been occurring years before. Now, I do think that as Pluto has entered Aquarius, we're going to see a shift, but we are in the last wave of Pluto going through Capricorn. It will retrograde back this week into Capricorn. But what I want to bring up by highlighting this is that with all the information data, and that includes all the astrology information you can read on the web, we still have to distill down, do research, give ourselves some real insight as to what that information means. And as we've become so hooked on the electronic moments of continually looking at our phones or information or what's out there, we aren't necessarily allowing that kind of cooking, brewing time, which allows space for true revelation, innovation, inspiration. And the moon in Gemini is a time when we get offered a lot of noise, information, gossip, stuff, and that's certainly valuable, but it's important to sift through it and not get caught up or derailed by something that flies in and distracts. I do know it's very helpful to not necessarily, I was reading Neil Gaiman made a point about how he writes longhand, and he goes into this space of writing because he knows that if he thinks, oh, let me look that up, he'll get distracted from the actual pleasure and where the trail leads you in his mind, because he's allowing in when he actually goes online and researches, and not that he doesn't do that, but in his process of writing, he does not allow that entering. And so, yes, old school, longhand. And what I found really validating is that I recently saw, looking for information, which I admit, being an air sign, I'm a junkie for, but that many schools are returning to penmanship because they've realized that the proprioceptive experience of when we write brings in something that we lose just by keyboarding. And I know that there may be a lot of reaction by my even saying that, but nonetheless, there is something that happens in the organic act of pen, pencil, calligraphic instrument, painting to paper that allows something different than that connection to a keyboard or digital frame. So opening up this week, again, waning moon cycles, so we're in a finishing up phase. Once again, that doesn't mean you can't start something, but you want to keep in mind Mercury's still retrograde. As I said, Pluto will be going back into Capricorn. And so this is really a great week for purging, getting things off your desk, deciding what you're not going to revisit or take with you into the next lunar cycle, or you want to shelve for a while. Really, really good for that. The thing to keep in mind over these first couple of days is with that moon in Gemini, we will be invited to follow these distractions. And what I consider valuable by that is, yes, I always have my little short to-do list. I've got a pages long one, but my little short to-do list is, these are things I'm doing today. And I kind of organize that the night before. It's, okay, these are things that are prioritized because they must be done, or I didn't do them, or it's really, I don't want to get to the point of like screaming at the deadline. Something I used to do all the time, but it's just, I'm at the point in my life where I really don't like that total do or die crunch at the end because it's stressful. So those things that you want to do, Monday is a really good thing to prioritize, knowing you're going to drift or get distracted, or someone might invite in or suggest something else. All that is fine. I just personally would jot it down on another piece of paper. Okay, that, interesting. And I'm sticking to those things that I need to accomplish on that day. Because I'm looking as I'm making this recording, I can see one thing that I just have not gotten to, and I really want to prioritize on Monday. Tuesday, very similar energy, and I should add this. These days they have a fun element to them. So that's why if your list of things you must do or you want to prioritize is relatively short, you can have that kind of fun thing that comes your way. Hey, let's do this. Want to have lunch? Blah, blah, blah. Because it's very fun to do that exchange of information, tease out different ideas, but not if it's at the cost of what it is you need to prioritize. One thing that is kind of the umbrella of this period of time is there's a picture in the sky between Venus and Uranus, which will bring in something that perhaps you don't usually think about. It might be, ooh, look at that, or that's an intriguing thought, or I can't believe she put those two colors together and she looks fabulous. I mean, it's that kind of energy that is unexpected but also has a delightful point to it. So it could be a dessert that has a picante, as we say in Mexico, like a heat or a different flavor that would be unexpected. Or for some of us who are looking around and intrigued by new and different, potential romantic partners or a friendship that isn't someone you usually hang out with or talk to. This could be, okay, let me have that conversation or see what they're about. And it can be actually something that can be very stimulating, very engaging. But the thing to remember about these couple of days is there is a indication that we can get, as I said earlier, distracted, confused, not have all the information we think we might need or that is available. It brings to mind, to me, a situation I found myself in last week where people were all riled up about something, and there was all this kind of gossip and shade going on about this situation. And I was thinking, wow, everybody's so quick to add fuel to the fire or to point fingers at the idea that this person would be this way. But there was nothing factual. There was nothing that was from a source. That sort of situation can be absolutely highlighted over these couple of days. And we don't want to be guilty of adding fuel to the fire of something that may be an illusion, or we don't have all the details or the facts that we need in order to really understand the situation at hand. And that's the thing about the opening days of this week. It really behooves us to know more. And that's why information is great, but you want to make sure you follow up. Where did it come from? What's the source? What's the real data that gives me a foundation for where this is even coming from? Yes, that sounds horrible or that sounds amazing, but what's the source? Is this really what I think it is? Or am I just getting seduced or encouraged to think a way that isn't necessarily real? And that includes, okay, so this is an intriguing situation. I'm so stimulated by it. But I really need to delve a little deeper to know it well. And again, Mercury retrograde. Do we have all the facts, information? Is everything forthcoming? Am I going to have to go over this again? Really important to know. So these 2 days are terrific for working on something you've already gotten process, working on not getting too distracted or derailed, unless you take a little time to, as I said, have fun, play. But you don't want to sign or invest or do anything that's too big a commitment before you really know all the facts. On Wednesday, the 28th, Mercury goes direct. And it goes direct exactly at 5:14 p.m. That's Eastern Time. The other thing to know about this day is the moon goes void, of course, at 3:14 a.m. Eastern Time, wee hours of the morning. When the moon's void, of course, we don't want to necessarily initiate or commit or do anything contractual or think that something's really going to follow through that somebody says they're going to do, because we don't have what we need to really make it all happen. I mean, this can be mitigated depending on somebody's personal horoscope, but that's the overall weather of when the moon is void, of course. The moon enters Cancer at 4:47 a.m., and at that point in time, we're in very different energy than when the moon was in Gemini. It's a water sign. It's what we call cardinal, so it loves to begin something. The energy is a lot more flowing, and everything that was a little obfuscated Monday, Tuesday, can sort of connect the dots and come together. We can really feel like we know where we're at in a lot more clarity. So even though Mercury has just gone direct, there is that nice lubrication that is helping us flow into more compassion, understanding, knowing where we're at. Again, Mercury, when it's gone direct, it retraces its steps of the time when it went retrograde. So at this period over the next week or so, we may feel ourselves or see that we're going over a lot of things that we had worked on before, or we want to double check, edit before we totally get it off our desk. The other thing is these next several days are before the moon is new. So it's really a perfect end of weekend to go over, make sure we know what's happening, really have conversations that deepen into what might have been a lot of running over quickly or not really having the depth and texture that they will have in the coming weeks. So this is a nice evening for those deeper conversations, and they may just be within self, like quiet of home, intimate conversations, self-reflection, meditation can be very deep, restorative. Anything therapeutic, excellent. And the same goes for Thursday the 29th. The other thing that's occurring on this day is that Venus is now making a lovely picture trine with Pluto, and not everybody necessarily thinks that's lovely, but I see it as being really enhancing those conversations, the depth of thoughtfulness, reflection, kind of getting into the hard spaces. Wonderful time for going over finances. And that doesn't mean, invest, initiate, because we're coming out of that. Now Mercury is direct. So as it moves over where it had been going backwards from our perspective. But still, we're in a very good time to understand finances better, to see where we're at, to plan and aim for, once that moon is new, what we might want to initiate, invest, strategically angle ourselves for. And it can be, especially Thursday, really good day for healing wounds. Wonderful for therapeutic work, psychotherapy, certainly body work, relationship healing. And it can be, Moon in Cancer, it can be wonderful for generational healing, which is, depending on your family history, what was the family mythology, what were the things that, and when I use the word mythology, I don't mean that it wasn't real. What I mean is that the stories, especially understand when we're infants, when we're children, these stories become bigger than life, and they impact us in ways that, depending on our history, can be tremendously traumatic and inform how we go through life, absorb, contemplate. And this is something that has really been understood more and more, really in the past decade, how the family history, and it's generational, really can inform or set up who we become and how we deal with things. So these are wonderful days to contemplate that, reflect on it, and not necessarily that we want to change our history or our story, but certainly invite in new relationships with it. So, depending on the generational story, we're not necessarily going lockstep through the same patterns that we might want to change. We might want to model differently for our children, grandchildren, and beyond. The stories are valuable. The history is essential. But the emotional, traumatic relationship with it may well be something to modify. So this can be a rich exploration to step into, or if it's been an ongoing thing, as it has certainly for me, I'm personally looking forward to giving myself some time to work on that as well. So Friday the 30th, the moon goes void, of course, at 11:24 a.m. And it enters the sign of Leo at 1:09 p.m. And I love this because this is opening up the weekend. The other thing that happens is it's just a brief meeting of the moon in Leo in opposition to Pluto before it moves back into the sign of Capricorn on Sunday. So what that means is that on Friday, we may have, or we may see in the news, which we've actually been seeing a lot of as Pluto has moved into Aquarius, we may see an incident or a story or something that happens that's very specifically about the signals or the signposts of how things are radically changing as we move into, really squarely move into this millennium. I mean, remember, this millennium is really, it's in baby stages. And when you think about 2000 to where we are now, 2024, we see how there's been this arc of setting up huge changes, which not everybody's happy about, certainly. And it can feel incredibly uncomfortable. And there is this sense of total unknown. But you can't stop a river from moving where it's going to move, although certainly technology and people have tried. But Mother Earth shows us that, certain things go where they go. So this day there may be conflict, especially midday, and that's going to pass. We may feel it personally, we may just witness it, but what I love as it continues is that Leo moon, as it moves through the sky, then invites in dialogue, conversation, laughter, dancing, saying, hey, so let's try this, or look at that. And so it sets up this delightful, playful energy, which I think absolutely is the antidote to a lot of the anxiety that's been occurring. We can't forget to play. I mean, we can, but it's at a tremendous cost. So that moon, as it goes through this weekend, engages with a lot of energetic pictures that ask for play, that ask for laughter, that ask for let's open up to new explorations. So what happens on Sunday is Uranus goes retrograde at 11:18 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, the thing with Uranus when it goes retrograde or direct is that it often shows a physical manifestation here on Earth. It's not always as dramatic as it has been in certain situations, and it can be usually tracked after the fact if it touches near a certain country or place in the world. But what's occurring is the planet that symbolizes change is changing direction. So when that occurs, well, from our perspective here on Earth, so when that happens, we get a wake-up call often. And it can be subtle, it can be quite traumatic. If you know where it lands in your horoscope, that is certainly something to look at. Uranus right now is in the sign of Taurus. So where is it moving through your personal horoscope? And that'll be the area of life that shows, okay, there's an about face, change in direction, what's been going on. And I can see also, especially towards evening, there can be an upset, resistance, emotional, about what that feels like. And how personal it is, again, will be reflected in your horoscope as to, is this actually activating a point in your chart? So especially of note, anyone with fixed signs, Leos, Aquarius, Scorpios, Taurus, but for all of us, it's moving through a personal area of life. And how triggered that is really depends on the activity in your horoscope. Pluto then dips back into late degree Capricorn. So we're going to have that activity for a period of time, just that back to like screaming for the status quo. This is what We don't want change. We want things to be the way they've been. And basically, good luck with that, because Pluto will go through Aquarius again, and it's changing. The world is changing. And how to deal with that, if that is disturbing to you, is to ask yourself, where can I change? And how can I be easier with what seems to be unsettling to me? Why is it unsettling? What perhaps do I have to change in order to move with a situation that isn't one I've known? So Pluto enters Capricorn again at 8:10 p.m. Eastern Time. This is probably going to be subtle. For most of us, we'll recognize it in the weeks to come, but I don't know that we'll necessarily feel it that evening. And it also goes void, of course, at 8:25 p.m. The moon does. And it's basically these couple of days, they're good days. I mean, overall, I would say these are great days for setting up and going into that dark moon period. The important thing is, how do you flow more with what is changing? Because you can't stop it. It's not going to stop. The momentum's too big, and it's beyond just one person or one cause or one situation. It's all indicated in the symbols in the heavens and in the world in which we live. And there's no stopping time and going back to situations that can't exist anymore. What we can do is work with what's here and create future through strength, love, and eyes wide open. The moon enters Virgo at 11:48 p.m., and that sets up the Virgo new moon that will happen on Monday. So as this day quiets, you can do your new moon, wishing, intentions, dreaming. Put those ideas under your pillow, have a good night's sleep, and wake up ready to take action with that first new moon of September into autumn, northern hemisphere, and spring, southern hemisphere. You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.